Hello and welcome to Talk Spooky to Me, the Ghost Story Guys mail show. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Paul Bestall.
And this is our opportunity to hear from you, our audience. Paul, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm just gathering more evidence of why I will never be in a cult and catching up on some good horror films.
Yeah, you were telling me off air about this cult documentary you watched, Sirius: An Apocalyptic Order, about the was it the Temple of the Order of the Sun Temple?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on which language it's been translated from, but essentially they were one of those. Well, they still are because they still exist. They're a transitioning cult that's loosely connected with interplanetary travel and the Knights Templar. What's not to like?
You know, man, I'm not going to say I wouldn't fall for a cult because I think that is a foolhardy thing to say. I think we can all, maybe in a vulnerable moment, but the cult cannot be based on this idea of universal love and light. Because if something out there tells me, Bren, you are loved, you are worthy of love, I'll be like, okay, you're full of shit. I am not buying this. I like me just fine, but I don't believe anyone else does, let alone Space Jesus.
Well, I think this is the thing about cults. Most people in them are fairly normal. It's only when you sort of scratch under the surface you find out that they believe that they should be floating through space to their home planet.
All things being equal, I should probably be floating through space to my home planet, but not the way you described these people tried to transition to another world. It was extremely brutal, and we will spare you, folks, because we don't want to traumatize you within 2 minutes of starting the show.
No, not at this time of year.
And of course, you caught up on some classic holiday horror films, such as both our favorites, It's a Wonderful Knife.
I will never watch that film again, ever.
When you were telling me off air, I wanted to bring it up. I'm like, oh, I bet you watched this too, just to needle you. But I couldn't remember the fucking name. I had to look it up.
I'll tell you what, Thanksgiving is the exact opposite of It's a Wonderful Knife, because Thanksgiving is funny, well-paced, well-written, and enjoyable, which is not any word I could associate with It's a Wonderful Knife.
Though the title does share several of the same letters.
That's the only positive it has, that it can spell its own name.
Fair.
But yes, I thoroughly enjoyed Thanksgiving, despite, and I don't want to spoil it, despite my main quibble being the end, reminding me extremely of another film that I love that's been released in the last 10 or 15 years. But it was damn good, gory fun.
I agree. Yeah, I saw that in theaters, and I remember thinking, then I watched Borderlands, and it made a lot more sense because Borderlands, made by the same filmmaker just earlier, it was in post-production longer. And I remember thinking afterwards, oh, I understand why Thanksgiving was so good. He was so pissed about this. That makes sense.
There you are. Stop wasting £140 million on a console game revamp that completely alienates everybody who loves it and has nothing to entice anybody who knows nothing about it.
The Minecraft movie can't hear you, Paul. It's too late. The damage is done. I have been in 2 theaters where that preview was shown, and to say that each time it landed with a resounding thud would be insufficient to describe the total non-reaction from the audience to every single beat in that trailer. They just don't give a shit. And maybe I just don't go to movies with Minecraft people, but I saw it with the Gladiator 2 audience. I don't know what the fuck crossover they thought there was with the Minecraft movie there. And Wicked. And I was like, again, I just don't know that you're pitching this to the right crowd, my guys. But then I don't know who the right crowd is based on that trailer.
Yes. I mean, obviously the world's gone a bit crazy since Monday with the new trailer for 28 Years Later landing.
Which I still haven't seen. Is it good?
It's very dour. Obviously, things haven't gone the way we expected after the last couple. There's a couple of shocking reveals in the trailer. There's a very powerful poem. I think it's a Kipling poem. Basically gives us this proposition that the virus has never really gone away, and what's left is probably even worse than zombies.
Interesting. Well, I love that franchise. I mean, I remember seeing the first 28 Days Later in Calgary with some friends, and it just scared the shit out of me. And then I saw it the 28 Weeks Later in Victoria, and I'll never forget that screening because, and I think I've told you this story before, prior to the film beginning, there were some kids sitting behind us who were just real shits, making smart-ass jokes. Ooh, I'm so scared. They weren't saying shit after that movie was over.
Yeah, the first one, despite the incredibly stupid plot hole in it, is still brilliant.
What's the plot hole?
They're going on about how it's going to take them 2 days to drive from London to Manchester. There's no cars on the road for a start. How's it going to take you 2 days? It takes you 3 hours. But apart from that, it's great.
Maybe they got one of those, the car they were driving was one of those little Robin Reliants.
Still, I would still say you would make that in, having been in a Robin Reliant in my childhood and being very scared, especially as you approached corners or braked or accelerated. That would be a very fear-packed journey. I'd actually prefer to be eaten by zombies than travel in one of those ever again.
That's fair.
They are, yeah. I mean, my mate's dad had one when we were kids growing up. And it was literally like driving on a bath with a roof on it. You could feel and see everything. There was this constant fear that you would just drop out of it at any given moment. Awful.
Amazing. On this episode of Talk Spooky, you can expect many more topical references, such as the Robin Reliant. And you will find all of those in the mail.
Our courteous and efficient staff is on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural elimination needs.
We're ready to believe you.
All right, our first message is from Adam, and I put this up at the front because I figured whatever it is we ended up talking about, this would absolutely be relevant. Adam says on Spotify, I love how I came here for ghost stories, and now I know so much about ukuleles. Adam, I cannot think of a comment that better describes our show. And so, to start the show proper, we have 4 messages from folks who responded to our call asking about their bad concert experiences. Paul, you want to take us away here?
I certainly shall. Tony on Spotify says, well, I've been to a few gigs that I saw walk-offs and fights, both in the audience and the band. But last year I went to see the Brian Jonestown Massacre in Canberra, Australia. I'm not that big a fan, but a mate really is. So I went. Well, let's just say abuse from the audience and from the band. Putting down each other and one amazing brawl between Anton Newcombe and Matt Hollywood was the best bit of the evening. I turned around to see where my mate was, and he'd buggered off halfway through the show.
I mean, I can't say I blame him, Tony, although I have to say I actually didn't realize that the Brian Jonestown Massacre was still touring. I thought they had imploded years ago. There was a movie about the Brian Jonestown Massacre, a documentary called Dig, that came out in 2004 about just what a spectacular flameout Anton Newcombe was. And I remember it because it came out at the same time as Overnight, which was about what a spectacular fuck up Troy Duffy was, the guy who made the Boondock Saints.
Yeah.
So there were these 2 documentaries at the same time about these 2 guys who just could not handle their fame whatsoever. And but I guess they made another Boondock Saints movie, so it seems only fitting that the Brian Jonestown Massacre is still out there touring.
Yeah, they're on tour next year.
I look forward to yet another year of never seeing them live.
Yeah, they're one of those bands I saw accidentally at the Lead Mill.
Oh, okay. How was the show?
I was bored to tears.
Yeah, that's fair.
Not my cup of tea.
All right, so next up for bad concerts, we have Joel. Joel says, worst gig I've ever been to, probably Bon Jovi on the Lost Highway Tour in Southampton. Other Bon Jovi gigs have been great. Unfortunately, this was during the period when Richie Sambora was on self-destruct, heading for rehab, and things on stage were somewhat strained between him and John. I think this may have been the last tour in the UK before he parted company with the rest of the band. The only other one was Guns N' Roses' Monsters of Rock, Donington 88, but that was due to tragic circumstances. It was, I think, the first appearance by GNR in the UK, and the crowd went mental. A crush ensued on muddy ground, and two fans lost their lives. That was a dark day in the history of Monsters of Rock and changed how big outdoor festivals were organized. And yeah, that would do it, Joel. I mean, that's what happened in Vancouver with Guns N' Roses. They no-showed back in the early 2000s, maybe. And there was a riot and a lot of people got hurt.
There was a big riot at the end of the 80s, early 90s in America, wasn't there as well?
There may have been.
This one wasn't their fault though, I have to say.
Okay.
It wasn't Guns N' Roses' first appearance in the UK either. It was their biggest appearance. They'd done, I think, they'd come over at the end of '87, and they'd played a few gigs in London because, being a hipster, I was into them at the beginning. No, I really like Welcome to the Jungle. I thought it was a brilliant rock song.
It is. Still, Appetite for Destruction is still one of the best debut albums of all time.
And so the following year, when everybody, 1989 was mental here, because the Appetite took 18 months to catch fire in the UK, because obviously I think it came out sort of early '87.
Yep.
Welcome to the Jungle, I don't think even hit the top 40 here. It scraped the top 50.
Really?
And they were kind of like, oh, is it going to be one of those bands where they don't make it? And then the summer of '88, Sweet Child of Mine just went off the charts. It just went mental. And they basically just exploded. So like an 18-month slow burn to kick off. But yeah, the Monsters Rock thing was horrific, because it was the biggest event they'd ever had. I mean, it had a stellar lineup. The thing is, Guns N' Roses weren't even headlining it at the time. I think they were third headliners. Iron Maiden headlined, and Iron Maiden's manager at the time locked them in a room for 5 hours and told them the weather was really bad, so they didn't know anybody died.
Oh, wow.
So they went out, performed their show, and everybody said it was one of the greatest Iron Maiden gigs of all time to 100,000 people. I mean, this is the thing. 2 people have died, and they carried on with the concert. And so Maiden didn't know what had happened until after the gig, they were told. Because it had rained, and how they had it set up at Donington was it was on a slope. And so as soon as people started to push, everybody just slipped. And they all just went down like dominoes.
Terrifying.
And so they had to stop for like 20 minutes, I think. Two people sadly lost their life. It completely changed outdoor. I mean, going to a large event in the 80s in the UK was a very terrifying experience. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I went to half a dozen football matches where I was in fear of my life through crushing.
Jesus Christ.
And I was only a teenager then, not the biggest of lads. So it was everywhere. Any outdoor event. And big gigs like that, outdoor gigs, were quite rare then. You had a few like Queen did Nebworth, and Zeppelin and Floyd would do really big gigs, but it just wasn't a thing then. Whereas now, I mean, you can't go to London in the summer without like 4 massive gigs going off at the same time. Well, I think when we went to see Pulp last year in Finsbury Park, take that, we're playing Hyde Park. So you'd got, 200,000 people going to 2 different gigs in the city at the same time. And there was another massive gig somewhere else. I think somebody was playing Wembley Stadium. So, let's just bring an extra 500,000 people in for the day. Why not?
Last thing on Donington. So the second appearance of Maiden at Donington was turned into their Live at Donington album. I had a customer back when I worked at Radio Shack who was banished from Revelstoke, legally banished by the courts. Apparently that was a thing that was still done in 2003 in Revelstoke. This guy there was an armed standoff. It was a whole thing. So his punishment was to be banished, like Romeo, from town. And he snuck back into Revelstoke to come to our store to buy the copy of Iron Maiden's Live at Donington that he had pre-ordered before he committed his crimes. So he came into our store, this little rat-faced guy with a ginger beard in his gross black leather jacket, and said, do you have my Iron Maiden CD? I said to the boss, I said, so-and-so's here. Should we call the cops? And she said, why is he here? Well, because he wants his Iron Maiden record. Oh, just sell it to him. Let him go. Are we aiding and abetting for the stupidest reason ever?
Well, yeah, they're a band that just don't get any credit in this country.
Iron Maiden, really?
It's very strange how the UK music scene treats Maiden. I kind of understand it. It's snobbery, as rock music always gets looked down upon from certain people in the music business. Doesn't matter which side of the Atlantic you're on, unless you're too big to ignore, like Zeppelin or Floyd or Rainbow or Sabbath. But I think Maiden are like the 10th biggest selling British act of all time.
I was going to say, those guys are giants. I mean, they've been around since, what, the late 70s? Was it Killers was 78?
Yeah, absolutely. Broke America with their, second album?
Yeah, I mean, the whole genre of new wave of British heavy metal is essentially Iron Maiden. When people use that phrase, that's more or less the template they're referring to.
Yeah. Judas Priest, Maiden, Saxon, Def Leppard.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Well, I'm sure Bruce Dickinson is crying into his giant piles of money.
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you to Nika McBrain, the drummer who retired last week after drumming for them for 41 years.
Well, thank you for your service, sir.
Yes, they've already replaced him, but they haven't announced who.
Well, hey, the machine keeps going.
Yeah, well, he's just said I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. That's strenuous shit.
Yeah. Drumming for Iron Maiden is hard work.
Man.
Only, with their touring schedule, they're all well into their 60s. But yeah, who knows? Who was telling me a story about Bruce Dickinson ringing somebody up and he ended up talking to his mum for 10 minutes? Who was that?
That was someone we had on the show recently.
Yes, Soraya.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Soraya had played his song and he rang him to say thanks and he wasn't in, so he ended up talking to his mum for 10 minutes.
Oh, man. That's great.
Yes, absolutely. It was nearly good enough to be in the Olympics for Britain in fencing.
Really?
Yeah, I think he got to be 7th best in the UK at one point.
This was pre-Maiden?
No, this was during Maiden.
Of course it fucking was. What an overachiever, that guy. He's a pilot, nearly Olympic level fencer. Fuck novelist. You, Bruce Dickinson. Was he a novelist?
Yeah, still is. I'm not. He writes some rather risque action comedy romps.
That's fantastic.
I'm trying to think. It's called something like Lord Percy Purple Serpent or something.
List of books. Here we go. Oh, wow. Whoa, Jesus Christ. The Adventures of Lord Iffy Boatrace.
That's it. That's the one. I think that was his first one.
And then there's The Missionary Position Further. It's the second book, too, in The Adventures of Lord Iffy Boatrace. I'm not really sure what's happening on the cover, but I'm not going to describe it. Wow. Oh. Yeah. I don't know that you can, actually, but that's fine. I will send you the link, and you can perhaps
say if I'm surprised.
No, you're not going to be surprised. I can't imagine. Honestly, if I ever see something that can surprise you, I'm going to shrivel up like the Nazi at the end of Raiders. This entire episode of Talk Spooky is just going to be talking about bad gigs. You know that, right? We're already at the half-hour mark.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. That's yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out why the rainbows. Like, why vomiting rainbows?
Why not?
Why not, indeed. Thank you, Joel.
Next up is from Janice, who says, "Hey guys, I'm happy to tell you all about a terrible concert I went to for a band that's still out there. So maybe by chance they'll hear this and it'll shame them into coming back to finish their set like they promised." Oh, you hate that, don't you? Maybe 8 or 10 years ago, my grown-up stepdaughter came to town. She, my husband and I went to the Beale Street Music Fest here in Memphis that comes with the Memphis in May World Championship Barbecue Cooking Contest. It's all happening there in Memphis in May. Then again, in some years, you're navigating drunk teenagers whilst wading through Memphis in mud. My husband and I grew up in the 80s, and luckily our daughter and my stepdaughter both like the same music that he and I listen to. So off we go to the fest to mostly see Five Finger Death Punch and possibly Slash with Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. But FFDP was who we were there for. We all loved their music, had all their albums, and had been looking forward to the show for a while. Firstly, they were late to the stage. Okay, it's a festival, so I can let that slide a little. When they hit the stage, the first song was fine. But then the next song didn't sound that great. Okay, maybe there's an issue with unfamiliar equipment. But then the next song, or the one after that, they stop playing halfway through, and the singer leaves the stage. We're all thinking there's got to be a tech issue. He comes back out, and they start another song. That fizzles out, and then the singer is back and forth on and off stage. The other musicians eventually leave the stage, but not before the lead guitarist starts mouthing off at the singer. There's nothing for several minutes. The singer then comes back on, mumbles something into the mic, sits at the drum set, and starts playing the drums. What the fuck? Other musicians come back and forth. The singer comes out and tries to say something in the crowd, and someone up close to the stage yelled for the singer to eat a dick. so loudly it was caught by the mic and cheered on by the crowd. In that moment, we'd all turned on the band. It was glorious. We wandered off to go listen to Slash and then to Breaking Benjamin, all of whom stole the night. To this day, I don't listen to any FFDP music. I unfollow them across all their social media, but not before eviscerating them on their own pages. I deleted all their music from my phone and Spotify. Actually, I have kept one song, and that's only because Rob Halford from Judas Priest is on it. And who doesn't love Metal's grandpa? So Ivan Moody and the rest of Five Finger Death Punch can go indeed. Eat a dick. Love y'all. Stay spooky. And Paul, eat some mushy peas for me. Thank you, Janice. Eat dicks.
Oh man, that's good. I love that the audience just turned. That like you fucked up so bad that even the audience is done with your shit.
Yeah, when your devoted fan base turn on you, you've lost.
Yeah. Oh man, for some reason,
what is that? Is it? I'm trying to think. That reminds me of something when somebody shouts, "You suck!" I'm trying to think what that.
I know what you're talking about, and I can't remember it either.
It's not the wedding singer, is it?
One of our listeners can verify that for us, or can tell us. For some reason, Facebook likes to recommend this one meme page to me, and it's mostly heavy metal memes. But what I think is funny is one of the things that comes up the most is people shitting on Five Finger Death Punch. So they clearly have spent a great deal of time pissing off their fan base.
Yeah, some bands get reputations because they either get too refreshed.
Oh yeah.
I mean, who was it? There was an infamous gig over here in Yorkshire, in Doncaster, a few years ago with Puddle of Mud.
Okay.
Which is quite weird because I've got a strange connection. I went to Dublin for my 30th and went for a wander round. And Puddle of Mud. It's very hard to say when you're talking about Dublin, Puddle of Mud. Especially after a couple of Guinnesses. And they were playing somewhere, I think, obviously. And so they were in the square where all the buskers are. And the lead singer was going around and helping everybody tune up their guitars and having a chat and having his picture taken. Lovely. Really great.
Oh, wow.
And then they played Doncaster a few years ago, and he's absolutely shit-faced. He can barely stand up. He's staggering around stage with a bottle of Jack Daniels, shouting at the audience, "Fuck you! Fuck you!" And trying to attack people there to drag him off.
Holy shit.
So, yeah, rock and roll, eh?
It's a hell of a drug. I think it was, I cut this out of the last show, but I think it was Murder City Devils we saw, my cousin and I, and the singer was just fucked. Just gooned out of his goddamn mind. And I asked Mike, I said, is this normal? And he kind of went, yeah, that's kind of half the appeal.
Yeah. Having seen the Stone Roses and the Happy Mondays pretend to be bands times over the years, yeah, it's not good when you've paid money to see somebody and they're either shit-faced or they've been caning it before the gig so they could hardly speak, or that.
Oh,
it's just, I mean, New Order were notorious in the 80s. They were either amazing or awful, primarily due to their refreshments. And since they stopped doing those kind of refreshments, they've become a consistently brilliant live band, which is strange, really. These people take drugs because they think it'll help them perform, and half the time they're shite.
As someone who once or twice back in the old days we tried having a drink before we recorded, it did not improve the situation. I remember the only other wild band I can think of where things kind of went off the rails was the Revolting Cocks. I saw them opening for Ministry, and the one guy, they ended up tying him down. The singer Luke, who's getting, I mean, maybe he was just part of the gig, but he just seemed to be getting pretty wild on stage and kind of bothering all the other band members. So I think they duct taped him. I don't know. It was the whole thing.
Sing.
Yeah, he just sang the fucking songs. I think he jumped off an amp at one point. Everyone's kind of like, guys, I think he's going to fucking hurt himself.
Yeah, don't want to do a Dave Grohl, do you? Is it Sweden? He came out, first song, and he's like, and he stepped forward and fell straight off the stage, broke his leg.
Oh, no.
And the funny thing was, I think they came back the year after, and, this is cheeky, but it really made me laugh. They came back the year after, and so they started with the same song again, and it's Dave Grohl there, straight off stage again, and everybody's like, oh, no! And then Cheeky Dave comes running in off stage. It's a stunt man. Let's rock. Now, that was funny.
That's good. That's a good bit.
Because he had to carry on gigging. I think they played a few gigs here and he had to sit in a chair with a broken leg.
Oh, damn.
But then he couldn't carry on. I think the pain got to him, which you would do. You break your leg, it really hurts for several weeks.
If I'm not mistaken, I think one time I saw Andrew WK perform in a wheelchair. And he was like bouncing up and down. I don't remember why he was in the wheelchair. It was an odd show.
You never know with him.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's like that punk singer over here who used to poo on stage. You never know what's going on.
Just one of them? I assume that's just a thing some of those guys do.
Yeah. And he used to throw it in the audience and stuff like that.
Nope. No, hard pass.
No.
Hard pass.
That's not rock and roll for me, baby.
You know what is rock and roll, though, Paul? Advertisements. That sweet river of commerce that bears us downstream to fortune and glory and...
Show it to the man.
Yeah, there you go. Stick it to the man. Don't buy any dog shit they sell you, but listen to them because, hey, we got bills to pay. You don't even have to listen to them, actually. Just hit 15. Download the episode, hit 15 seconds ahead. We get paid. You don't buy a bunch of garbage you don't need. Unless, of course, that ad is for the lovely Brett Manning, in which case you should buy everything you can because she's cool, her stuff is great, and that's a killer fucking discount. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. And Paul has a Temu story for us. And I assume he's not referring to 90s hockey sensation Temu Solani.
No. What I know about ice hockey, you can write on a stamp. Yeah, so after last week, I get an email Friday from Temu saying, "Hi there, we've noticed your presence online." It's an official one. I've checked it all out. And they've invited me to join their collaboration influencer team. And I'm torn between seeing what shit they'd send me to try promote or just ignore it. So I've just ignored it for a week.
Paul, if you don't agree and see what they send you, I will wingsuit in from the sky and beat your ass. I have to know. We didn't take a call from OnlyFans so you could turn down an offer from Temu.
Okay, I'll reach out to them and see if they send me like a false arse or something. Butt lift. Woo!
We're moving up in the world. It's very strange.
God knows.
All right. So in our catalog of bad gigs, we have one more, and then we'll move on to we're probably gonna have to do, this will be a two-parter. The second half will be our next episode. One last thing before we move on from Janice's message. She mentions Rob Halford, and Rob Halford is a treasure. He is one of the greatest things to come out of heavy metal as a whole, but also the UK. And I just want to encourage everyone to check out his solo material, because some of that shit is actually really good if you like heavy metal. There is his Resurrection album. There is Crucible. Really, really good stuff. He's got a song called Cyberworld on Resurrection that is the lyrics are the dumbest thing, but it is so much fun you don't care. Check out Rob Halford's solo material. And we have one more email about bad gigs, and that comes from Alyssa. Alyssa says, "Just listened to the latest Talk Spooky and had to share my terrible gig story. In 2010, I was lucky enough to go to the closing ceremony of the World Equestrian Games. This was the first year it was ever held outside of Europe. One would think the organizers would secure an amazing artist to close out the whole thing, right? Well, they got iconic Lyle Lovett. I had no clue who he was, but he sang well enough. That is, until he started singing with all of his might, 'I'm gonna choke my chicken' all night long, over and over again. We couldn't believe it." Let's just repeat that for those of you sitting in the back. "I'm gonna choke my chicken all night long." Now, if you don't know who Lyle Lovett is, I will save you Googling it. He looks like if Lurch worked for the Ponderosa. That's what Lyle Lovett looks like.
And one of Angelina Jolie's former husbands.
Julie Roberts.
Was it? Oh, yeah. Which weird country singer was Angelina Jolie with then?
Oh, I don't know. She was
That's
Billy
confused
Bob.
me now. Oh, I might be getting, because they both look quite similar lived-in faces, haven't they? That's right. Yeah. And Billy Bob Thornton clearly isn't a country singer.
He tried to be.
Hearing that Lyle Lovett song, which I believe is called Farmer Brown. I am aware of that song. And it's one of those songs that you think, how has anybody over the age of 14 wrote this?
Well, if you want to hear Billy Bob Thornton trying to be a country singer, he has an album out. And the interview he gave with John Gameshi, who, let's face it, folks, as we all learned, if you're from Canada, John deserved this. But he did an interview on Canadian radio with John Gameshi. And it is the most awkward thing you are going to hear on the radio that isn't someone calling into Art Bell asking for help getting their dick out of a toaster. It is the worst. Billy Bob is just, and again, John Gameshi's not a great person, but Billy Bob Thornton is, I won't say he's worse, but he is a surly bastard. And at one point he's asked, like, well, what are some of your musical influences? And he says, would you ask Tom Petty that question? Give me a fucking break, Sling Blade. Come on.
No, because Tom Petty's dead.
This was before that. Before this question would have to be asked with a Ouija board.
Saying he killed Tom Petty?
I'm not saying he didn't.
Yeah, he was on. He's created a meme recently, Billy Bob Thornton, from being on TV over here.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, he turned up wearing a very strange outfit, and now people are saying, why is Billy Bob Thornton dressed like an undercover policeman at Burning Man Festival?
I am looking this up now.
Yeah, we get all kinds of random people turning up on British telly at 7:00. We've had the incredible Kerry Washington turn up this evening, which gave my night a wonderful start.
That's fair. Yeah, that would do it.
With Tyler Perry.
Okay, that's less great, but that's fine.
Yeah, they've directed an emotional and powerful film about black servicewomen in World War II.
I mean, that's great. I wish someone other than Tyler Perry had made it. But as long as I suppose the story is being told, that's the important thing.
Yeah, looks quite interesting. It's on Netflix from next Friday, the 20th of December. Okay. The story of the 65888. It was a group of black female service personnel who were drafted to the UK to sort out the soldier postal backlog of 17 million letters.
Oh, very cool.
And they were based in Birmingham. So, yeah, interesting story that often one of those missing stories from the Second World War should get overlooked. So hopefully it'll shine a light on the work of black service people during the Second World War, which often gets overlooked.
Yeah. Well, the problem I have with Tyler Perry is I feel like, among other things, the quality of his output has declined precipitously from the beginning of his career. And also, he was going to build a massive studio in Atlanta in the last year or so, and then he was invited to try out OpenAI's Sora, its video generating bullshit, and he canceled the building of his new studio because he thought this was the future of AI. And that sounds like the dumbest thing anyone's ever heard, especially considering the fact that OpenAI, well, never, I'm not going to get into it, but despite the fact that it's the dumbest shit in the world, it makes sense because if you watch Tyler Perry's performance in the Alex Cross movie, he himself seems like he was generated by AI. I get it, Tyler Perry. I get it.
Well, we've come a long way from Oliver Reed's floating head in Gladiator.
It's improved, but we haven't come a long way. I think, if anything, we've regressed.
Only spiritually.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Have we ever? All right. Well, let's get to some more email before we wrap up. Because, again, this is the gig stuff went on much longer than I expected it to.
Like Guns N' Roses.
Or Bruce Springsteen.
I was one last thing I was going to say. They headlined Glastonbury here last year, GNR, and which is one of those because their reputation does precede. So like, right, what time are they going to turn up? And they actually were on stage, I think, about 5 minutes late, which is standard for Glastonbury.
That's nothing.
And I kept thinking, has someone kidnapped Axl Rose's brain and put somebody polite in it? Because he kept saying thank you all the time, and he was really talking to the audience and being very sort of warm and trying to make conversation and occasionally telling a story. I mean, his voice was absolutely blown to shit. Whether it was the mix on the night or whatever, but it just disappeared at times. And sometimes you'd hear it, you're like, ooh. And then other times it'd be like, oh, okay, there it is. But yeah, it was a very strange gig, and I couldn't stop watching. So I watched it for all 2.5 hours. And I was entertained, but I'm glad I didn't pay money to see that because I don't think he can sing anymore, sadly.
Could be. I mean, I saw him in Vancouver in, I can't remember the year, it was pre-pandemic, maybe the last year or two before the pandemic. And it was a really solid show. But again, that's 5 years is a long time, especially when you're getting older and you're singing every night. Mind you, I saw Halford in 2004. I saw Judas Priest, and he was really struggling. But he, he's been performing since. So maybe it was just an off night for both of them.
Yeah, well, sometimes vocalists, at the end of the day, it's still an instrument and you've got to look after it. Sometimes touring takes its toll.
Yeah. And as far as him saying and being nice to everyone, maybe he was visited by 3 ghosts. Because that guy was a piece of shit for a lot of his career based on what I've read. Stephanie Seymour just appeared above him in his room one night with a knife in her teeth and a dead look in her eyes.
Yeah. I've never found out that story, that during the making of the November Rain video, he was so strung out that he actually thought he'd married her.
Well, didn't they get married? Weren't they together for a while? Because she has very publicly said she spent a lot of years in therapy trying to undo the damage he did.
Way to go, mate.
3 ghosts, Paul. Solve a lot of our problems. 3 ghosts.
Every time.
Or 1 guy in a hoodie. That's all I'm going to say. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Or somebody dressed as a pilgrim with an axe.
Or that. This one comes from Jassim. Jassim says, "Hey there, Brennan and Paul. I'm your listener from Kuwait. I've been listening to your show since 2020, and I'm up to date with every episode. I just want to tell you how much I love this podcast, and it got me through hard times, and it also made it better in good times. As you know, here in our culture in the Middle East, we do believe in jinn, and as part of our religion. And for your information, we did believe in them since before Islam. We consider them as a creation of God, same like us, but they're living in their own world. Same as we do here, but with boundaries between us. Some can cross these boundaries from both sides, by any means such as witchcraft or so on. They have good guys and bad, and they have kings and nations, and they also have religions. They have towns and cities, but all in a different way we don't really know about, and we believe this deeply in our religion and culture. I get really excited when you guys mention them because they fascinate me, and I hope you give your thoughts on this subject, and if possible, an episode about it. It's my first time writing to you, and I hope I sent my message in the right place. Thank you guys for the perfect job you're doing. Keep doing it, and much love from Kuwait." And Jassim, thank you so much, man. I think it is so fucking cool that someone from Kuwait is listening to our show. Like, that's, again, we've talked about this recently on other episodes, this idea that folks from all around the world, I think something like, when I checked our Spotify Wrapped, it was like 69 countries have listened to our show over the last year. And it's just so humbling.
Brilliant, isn't it? I mean, to get an email from the Middle East is just fab. So thank you very much, Jassim.
And I actually have a bunch of jinn stories assembled in a script. I think I've got enough for a full episode. They're from Oman and Yemen. But I have been waiting because I've got a book, pretty solid resource on jinn called Legend of the Fire Spirits. And I have it back in Victoria. I've got a shitload of markings that like place markers and stuff in it. And I'm going to grab it when I go back for Christmas and bring it here to London with me so I can start making notes to do a jinn episode in the new year. So very, very much something we want to do. I just wanted to make sure we do it right. And that includes, I'm never worried about Paul. I'm worried about me making sure I'm not talking out my ass, especially on such an important subject.
Yes. Well, I've mentioned my second-hand jinn story that one of my work colleagues told me, haven't I?
You have, but give it to us again, if you don't mind. Yeah,
so my friend Ahmed is originally from Somaliland, and we were once talking about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, my uncle had an encounter with a jinn, and he used to walk home every night along the beach to get home, and this one particular night he heard this beautiful singing coming from the sea, and as he looked, there was this beautiful woman there." And he thought, "Oh, she's very pretty." And so he ignored it. And then the day after, same thing happened again, and she was there again. And this went on for 3 or 4 nights in a row. And each night he was getting closer and closer to the sea without realizing it. And so after about 4 or 5 nights of this, he mentioned it to somebody in the community. And they basically explained that, yeah, it's not a woman, that's a jinn, and she's trying to entice you to come into the sea so she can take you to her kingdom and be her husband. And so he went on the beach and performed some rituals for him, and his uncle never saw her again.
Fascinating. I had forgotten about that story completely.
Fascinating, that. Just randomly told me. Just said, "Oh, well, you're interested in these things, and I know you'll know what a jinn is." So he told me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And thank you, Jassim. Yeah. Again, look forward to our jinn episode in the first half of next year.
Mystery Machine on Blue Sky says, I'm such a huge fan of you guys. Honestly, with the things happening here in the US and misogyny at an all-time high, you are one of the pods I need to remind me that there are still some really decent guys in the world. You and Paul are wonderful. Never stop. Are you sure that's not from you?
I would never compliment myself. I'd have to believe it first.
Yes, very, very nice.
Thank you very much, Mystery Machine. We're happy that we can be that show for you. I mean, it's important to remember I'm not a good person. I'm a real son of a bitch. I'm just not a real son of a bitch for those reasons. All right, guys, we are going to draw a line under it there, but fear not, we will have more correspondence from you on the next Talk Spooky. We're doing some batch recording, so to give us some time off for Christmas. So if you want to send us some comments for shows in the new year, we would love to read them. Send them to ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. That's ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. Or again, you can comment on YouTube, Instagram, send me messages on Blue Sky, send Paul messages on Threads. I'm also on Threads, all those places, and we will do our damnedest to read them here on the show. And again, we'll throw out one more call. If you have a bad gig, if you want to send us more bad gig stories and have us just tangent off for the better part of 35 minutes on Iron Maiden and Rob Halford's solo catalog, then we will do that. That is, after all, what Talk Spooky is for.
Or if you get anything suitably spooky or supernatural for Christmas, tell us what your wonderful gifts that Santa has brought you.
Hell yeah, please do. Paul, my friend, where can everyone find you online?
Well, apparently you can find me on Threads. You can find me on Threads, yes, and the show Mysteries and Monsters across all social media, well, most social media networks and podcast sites.
Fabulous. I'm Largely the Truth, also on Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. And you can find my horror fiction podcast, Fear Daily, everywhere fine podcasts live, or at feardaily.com. And of course, it would not be an episode of Talk Spooky if we didn't end with a tune. This time around, we're featuring a Christmas single from our friends at Nakatomi Freefall.
Hey.
That is Can't Stop Christmas. Nakatomi Freefall, of course, part of our record label, Night Harvest Recordings, and you can find more from them at nakatomifreefall.bandcamp.com or by searching for them everywhere you stream your tunes. Thanks, as always, for joining us, folks. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. We will be back next week with episode 204. But until then, we will leave you with Nakatomi Freefall and Can't Stop Christmas.
Santa's coming to town!
Oh my God!
Time stops, Santa Claus drops and is quickly knocked out by a stranger. Chloroform blast down on his ass as I smile and close the door. I exist on the naughty list, an irresistible danger. Christmas dreams, muffled screams. I need something more. I believe in you. Tonight I'm adopting you.
I woke up from a trance without any pants. My eyes feel like they're on fire. Looking all around, there's an elf on the ground. Oh no, no, no.
Christmas all the time. I don't think that's too much to ask. Christmas presents, turkey, food.
And I can't stop thinking about you all the time. Don't you dare make me cry. And I can't stop thinking about you all the time. You're making me cry. Tonight I'm abducting Stop bringing me gifts.